So here we are once again to talk about the latest installment of the MCU, which is of course Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, a title I was really looking forward to from back when Phase 4 was first announced. To me, the title in itself just sounded like it was going to use the character correctly, because when I think of Doctor Strange, I think of, otherworldly adventures. You'll have him in a fringe team like the Defenders, or a background team like the Illuminati, but for the most part, when I think of Doctor Strange, what I think of is a character made by Steve Ditko back in the 60s, whose adventures were essentially all a metaphor for tripping out on psychedelics. And the film didn't disappoint at all. I'd give it a 7 out of 10 objectively. I thought it was very good. But what I would say is that it wasn't what I expected at all. This isn't a follow-up to What If, it's not a follow-up to Loki, it's not a follow-up to No Way Home. It's not really a follow-up to any of the MCU projects that have pointed towards the multiverse. This is a follow-up to WandaVision. This movie was really about Wanda. And Elizabeth Olsen gave an amazing performance. She is evil, she is haunting, she is scary, but she's also very vulnerable and very tormented, and you can't help but empathize, but at the same time, that is one wicked witch. This film is the film that African parents thought Harry Potter was, and didn't let their children go and see it. If your parents didn't let you watch Harry Potter, you should not be going to watch this movie. Even me, in my seat, I was thinking, Jesus Christ, what is this? But no, it was. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the way they pushed the boundaries of the age rating. This is a PG-13 film at 12A in the UK, and it felt like they really did. They pushed it to the limit, because a few more scenes, this film could have been a 15 or R-rated film. But yeah, I loved it, and I think that Sam Raimi did a great job. This felt very unique, particularly in the camera work. The camera work was fantastic. Some of the scenes really had that haunting horror feel, and I'm glad that they let that happen in an MCU film. It did feel very unique, felt like a breath of fresh air. It still suffers from some of the MCU issues, but I think that's just more a thing of where these are just things that are going to be commonplace and you can't really do anything about them. I think the main issues of the film are maybe character development in terms of Wong, America Chavez, and Stephen Strange. I think Stephen's given a character, given an arc that we've kind of already seen. We've already seen that Stephen isn't able to love properly, and it's not that compelling because we haven't seen that much of his relationship with Christine in the live action world. So I didn't really care for it. He still seems quite brash, hasn't necessarily taken that step to being the Sorcerer Supreme, and also obviously he isn't, Wong is. So in the next film, I would like to see him go through that experience of becoming the Sorcerer Supreme and taking on that responsibility. America Chavez, she's not in the film that much. She's more of a plot point than a character in the film, unfortunately. We do get this sort of heartwarming, a scene that's meant to be quite emotive with her, a memory that she has. But again, because it's not that long, it doesn't really hit that hard. But interesting to see what they do with her going forward in the MCU. With Wong, his relationship with Stephen doesn't really develop or anything like that. I mean, it kind of does. We see that Stephen develops a bit more respect for him at the end of the movie, but it's not necessarily turned into their traditional roles yet, which I think it probably won't, because when you look at Wong and Stephen's relationship in the comics, considering the racial dynamics, it's maybe a bit problematic to have that kind of relationship in a modern movie. Also, I was a little bit distracted by the very obvious clear reshoots with Wong, because at times he's got a level 1 all over, then he's got this really bushy head out of nowhere. But I will say that, yeah, they didn't really know what to do with him. Again, he's kind of more of he's used for different plot points rather than having actually a character arc, which is unfortunate, but in these big budget films, sometimes you don't always have the opportunity to do so. And this is a relatively short film. This is only 2 hours. So that's a relatively short film for an MCU, and I think people are, and I kind of felt that refreshing. It's fast paced. It's from the first scene, it's go go go, and I like that. It didn't need to be longer, I don't think, except for to give those characters arcs. But again, it's not that their lack of arc took away from the film so completely that I couldn't believe it. It still was a good film. It's, like I said, 7 out of 10. But yeah, it really is Wanda's show. Doctor Strange is a titular character, but Wanda really does steal the show. And it's really interesting to see her go through what she goes through and just dive deeper into this pit of despair. Some of the cameos we got in this movie were crazy. I won't spoil anything in this review, but yeah, I think potentially some of these cameos are better than the No Way Home cameos. So I definitely recommend this film. It didn't necessarily have that turning the corner in terms of storytelling that I'd hoped that we would get to eventually in the MCU, but it definitely feels fresh, especially in terms of the direction. The camera work was stellar. I think some of the dialogue was a bit dated, and you can kind of tell that Sam Raimi hasn't directed in a while. But I do appreciate, like, Sam Raimi is obviously someone that had a big impact on my childhood, directing the Spider-Man films in the noughties. And I appreciate that Sam Raimi has what I call it Raimi camp, where it's basically he has this very earnest attempt to turn comic books into movies. And there are one or two scenes where you really see that come out and play out really well. There are one or two scenes where maybe it doesn't come off as well as it could, and it's a bit cheesy, but I appreciate him for actually trying to turn comic books into movies. Like he's very earnest, and I appreciate that. Another thing, for me, I feel like VFX are getting worse. I don't know if it's in my head, but I just don't think they look as crisp as I'm used to. Case in point, there is one effect in this movie that was also in the first Matrix film. Now that's all the way back in 1999. And to me, it looks way more impressive in the Matrix than it did in this movie. So yeah, I think VFX, I think they've kind of stagnated, and potentially until there's that next big leap in technology, we won't get more impressive visuals. Not to say it looked bad, but I just think there is that, for me, I'm just kind of seeing this, maybe the VFX have kind of, well, at least CGI VFX have kind of hit the ceiling of their capability. So to sum it up, Multiverse of Madness is a nice little addition to the MCU. It's unique visually, it's fast paced, it's pretty simple story wise, and it's exciting. It's genuinely exciting and refreshing. But there is some lacking in terms of the character development and the fact that Doctor Strange took second billing to Wanda in his own movie. And I guess in general, I'm still a little confused about the overarching... Maybe there is no overarching thing in Phase 4, and that's fine. But I don't know, I feel like we were kind of led to there would be something, because there's always a little sort of nudge. Like at the end of WandaVision, Agatha says something that kind of insinuates something bigger is coming. Similarly, at the end of Loki, the introduction of Kang, or introduction of He Who Remains, insinuating something bigger was coming. So I'm still kind of wondering what that is. But, as ever, I'm excited for the next installment.